How did students sabotage their entire school? It started with a simple chemistry experiment in Mr. Dalton's class. We were mixing these harmless chemicals that made colorful smoke when combined. Nothing dangerous, just basic stuff to teach us reactions. But Liam, this quiet kid who always sat in the back, noticed something weird about the water in the beakers. "Guys, look at this," he whispered, pointing to a strange yellowish tint. I thought it was leftover chemicals, but Liam shook his head. "That's not from our experiment. The water comes out like this from the tap." We didn't think much of it until the next day when half the swim team got sick after practice. Rashes, stomach problems, burning eyes. The school blamed it on chlorine imbalance, but Liam wasn't convinced. He filled an empty water bottle from the drinking fountain and another from the bathroom sink. Both samples had that same yellow tint. That's when Amelia, who won every science fair since 6th grade, suggested we test the water ourselves. Using equipment from the chemistry lab after school, we discovered something terrifying. Lead levels were off the charts, like way higher than what's considered safe. We told Mr. Dalton, expecting him to sound the alarm immediately. Instead, he got this weird look on his face and said, "I'll handle it. Don't tell anyone else." 2 days passed. Nothing happened. No announcements. No water shutoffs. Nothing. When we confronted him again, he finally broke. "The principal knows," he whispered. "They've known for 8 months. The school board decided replacing the pipes would cost too much money." But let me back up and explain how we got to this point, because the real story started weeks before that chemistry experiment. See, our school, Jefferson High, had been falling apart for years. Paint peeling off walls, ceiling tiles missing, radiators that either blasted heat or gave nothing at all. We'd all gotten used to it. Just part of the charm of attending a school built in 1953, you know. I'm Jake, by the way. Junior year, nothing special about me. Average grades, played JV baseball until I tore my shoulder sophomore year. Spent most of my time trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life. My dad worked construction. My mom was a nurse at the county hospital. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. Just regular middle-class family in a regular middle-class town where the biggest excitement was usually the Friday night football games. The thing about Liam was that nobody really knew him. He transferred to Jefferson at the start of junior year from some private school across town. His parents had divorced over the summer. Nasty custody battle that made the local paper. His mom couldn't afford the private school tuition anymore, so here he was, sitting in the back of chemistry class, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I felt bad for the guy. Honestly, new school, parents going through hell, didn't know anybody. So when Mr. Dalton paired us up for the semester, I figured I'd try to be friendly. Nothing major, just not make his life any more miserable than it already was. Liam was weird though. Not in a bad way, just different. While the rest of us were mixing chemicals and watching them bubble and smoke like we were 8 years old again, he was actually paying attention to the process, taking notes about reaction rates and temperature changes, and all this stuff that went way over my head. "You really into this science stuff?" I asked him during one of our lab sessions. He shrugged. "My old school had better equipment. We did more advanced experiments." There was something bitter in his voice when he said it. Like every reminder of his old life was a knife twist. That's when I started noticing things too. Not the water thing, not yet, but just how run down everything was. The burner we were using barely worked. Half the beakers had chips in them. The scale for measuring chemicals was so old you had to tap it to get an accurate reading. "This place is kind of a dump, huh?" I said, trying to make conversation. Liam looked around the lab like he was seeing it for the first time. "Yeah," he said quietly, "it really is." But it wasn't until that day with the yellow water that things got interesting. Liam stared at that beaker for a solid minute before saying anything. I remember thinking he was probably just spacing out, which happened to me all the time in chemistry. But when he pointed out the color, I looked closer. He was right. The water did have this weird tint to it, like someone had added a drop of food coloring, but barely enough to notice. "That's weird," I said, but I didn't think much of it. Water sometimes look different depending on the lighting, right? But Liam filled a clean beaker straight from the tap, and there it was again, that same yellowish color. "Has it always been like this?" he asked me. I honestly couldn't remember. You don't really pay attention to the color of water when you're brushing your teeth or getting a drink. It's just water. The next day, everything changed. I was in study hall when the announcement came over the intercom. "Attention students and staff. Due to illness affecting several members of our athletic teams, pool activities are suspended until further notice." That was it. No explanation, no details, just suspended until further notice. By lunch, rumors were flying. Someone said the entire swim team was in the hospital. Someone else heard it was food poisoning from the cafeteria. Marcus Chen, who was on the team, looked like death warmed over when I saw him in the hallway. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had these angry red patches on his arms. "Dude, what happened to you?" I asked. "I don't know, man," he said, scratching at his arm. "Started feeling sick yesterday after practice. Thought I was coming down with something, but then half the team got it too." That's when I remembered Liam and the yellow water. I found him in the library during lunch, which wasn't surprising. He spent most of his free time there, probably because it was quiet and nobody bothered him. "Hey," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. "You hear about the swim team?" He looked up from his book. "Yeah, chlorine imbalance," they said. "You still thinking about that water from yesterday?" Liam closed his book and leaned forward. "I've been thinking about it all morning. My mom's a nurse. She told me about this case where a whole apartment building got sick from contaminated water. Same symptoms. You really think it's connected? Only one way to find out." That afternoon, we met by the water fountains near the gym. Liam had brought 2 empty water bottles from home. He filled one from the fountain, another from the bathroom sink down the hall. Both samples had that same yellowish tint when you held them up to the light. "Okay, so the water looks weird," I said. "What now?" "We test it." "With what?" "We're not exactly scientists here." That's when Liam got that look in his eye. The same look he got when he was really focused on a chemistry problem. Actually, we kind of are. The next day, Liam approached Amelia Rodriguez after chemistry class. Amelia was one of those students who made the rest of us look like slackers. Straight straight A's since kindergarten, president of the science club, already had college recruiters asking about her. She was also kind of intimidating, to be honest. Not mean, just really intense about everything. Amelia, Liam said, can we talk to you about something? She looked between me and Liam like she was trying to figure out what we wanted. If this is about copying homework, the answer is no. It's not about homework, I said. It's about the water. What about the water? Liam pulled out one of his samples. Look at the color. Amelia took the bottle and held it up to the window. Her expression changed immediately. Where did you get this? School water fountain, Liam said. Yesterday. And you think this is connected to the swim team getting sick? Maybe. We're not sure. But Amelia was already walking toward Mr. Dalton's classroom. Come on. Mr. Dalton was grading papers when we knocked on his door. He was young for a teacher, maybe late 20s, and actually seemed to give a damn about whether we learned anything. Most teachers at Jefferson had that 1,000-yard stare of people who'd given up years ago, but Mr. Dalton still had energy. What can I do for you three? He asked, looking up from his papers. Liam held up the water bottle. We think there might be something wrong with the school's water supply. Mr. Dalton's pen stopped moving. What do you mean? The water has this yellow color, Amelia said, and given the symptoms the swim team experienced, you think it's contaminated. We think it might be, Liam said. We were wondering if we could use the lab equipment to test it. Mr. Dalton stared at the bottle for a long moment. Something flickered across his face, but it was gone before I could figure out what it was. Sure, he said finally, but let's keep this between us for now, okay? No point in starting a panic if it turns out to be nothing. That afternoon, we stayed after school to run the tests. Amelia knew her way around the lab equipment better than some of the teachers. She set up these complicated procedures to test for different contaminants while explaining what each one looked for. This one tests for bacteria, she said, adding drops to one sample. This one's for heavy metals. This one's for chemical pollutants. It took almost 2 hours to run all the tests. When the results came back, nobody said anything for a full minute. The lead levels were insane. Like not just a little bit over the safe limit, but way over. Dangerous levels. The kind of levels that could cause serious health problems, especially in kids. Holy shit, I breathed. Language, Mr. Dalton said automatically, but his heart wasn't in it. He was staring at the test results like they might change if he looked hard enough. This is really bad, isn't it? Liam asked. Amelia nodded. This isn't just contamination. This is poisoning. Mr. Dalton took the results from her hands. I'll handle this. You three need to promise me you won't tell anyone else about this until I can figure out the proper channels. Shouldn't we call someone right now? I asked. The health department or something. I need to follow protocol, Mr. Dalton said. Trust me, this will get handled, but I need you three to keep this quiet for now. We agreed, but I could tell Liam wasn't happy about it. As we walked to the parking lot, he kept shaking his head. What's wrong? I asked. I don't know, something about the way he reacted, like he wasn't surprised. What do you mean? I mean, if you just found out your school's water was poisoned, wouldn't you be more freaked out? I thought about it. Mr. Dalton had been calm, really calm, like he was processing information rather than discovering it. That weekend, nothing happened. No announcements, no water shutoffs, no health department officials swarming the school. Monday came and went. Tuesday too. By Wednesday, I was starting to think maybe Mr. Dalton was handling it behind the scenes, working through proper channels like he said, but Liam wasn't buying it. It's been 5 days, he said as we walked into chemistry class. How long does it take to make a phone call? After class, we cornered Mr. Dalton again. Any update on the water situation? Amelia asked. Mr. Dalton's face went pale. He looked around to make sure no other students were nearby, then motioned us closer. Look, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I reported it. I followed protocol. I told Principal Steinberg, and Liam pressed. Mr. Dalton ran his hands through his hair, and nothing. He said he'd handle it. That was 5 days ago, I said. I know, so what's he waiting for? Amelia asked. Mr. Dalton looked like he was wrestling with something. Finally, he sighed. He's not waiting for anything. He already knew. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. What do you mean he already knew? Liam asked. I mean, they've known about the lead contamination for 8 months. The school board decided that replacing the pipes would cost too much money. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. They've been poisoning us for 8 months. That's why you weren't surprised, Liam said. You already suspected. Mr. Dalton nodded. I've been wondering about some of the health issues we've seen this year. More kids getting sick, concentration problems, behavioral issues. Lead poisoning can cause all of that. So what do we do? Amelia asked. Nothing, Mr. Dalton said quickly. I could get fired for telling you this. The district has lawyers. They'll destroy me if they find out I leaked this information. So we just let them keep poisoning people. I asked. I'm working on it. There are proper channels, procedures to follow. But even as he said it, Mr. Dalton didn't sound convinced. He sounded like a man who'd already given up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I'd drunk from those fountains, all the times I'd brushed my teeth in the school bathrooms. How many other kids were being affected? How many parents had no idea their children were being poisoned every day? I called Liam around midnight. You awake? I asked. Yeah, can't stop thinking about it. We have to do something. Like what? Mr. Dalton's right about the lawyers. If we go public, they'll just deny everything and ruin anyone who speaks out. So what? We just let it continue. There was a long pause. I have an idea, Liam said finally, but you're not gonna like it. The next day at lunch, Liam laid out his plan. It was crazy. It was risky. It was probably illegal, and it might just work. We can't go through official channels, he said. They control all of that, but we can make it impossible for them to ignore. How? Amelia asked. We force their hand, make the problem so visible, so public, that they have no choice but to act. Over the next few days, Liam recruited more people. Not random students, but specific ones. Marcus from the swim team, who was still dealing with the health effects. Sarah Walsh, whose little brother was in elementary school and had been having behavioral problems. Tommy Morrison, who worked for the school newspaper but never got to write about anything important because the administration censored everything. Each person Liam brought in had a personal connection to the problem. Each one had been affected in some way. By the end of the the week, we had 17 people total. We met at Liam's house the following Saturday. His mom was working a double shift at the hospital, so we had the place to ourselves. Liam had printed out copies of our test results, along with research about lead poisoning and its effects. Here's what I'm thinking, he said, standing in front of his living room like he was giving a presentation. They're keeping this quiet because they think they can control the narrative. But what if we take that control away? How? Asked Marcus. By making it impossible to hide. Liam pulled out his phone and showed us a group text he'd created. Monday morning, the district superintendent is doing his monthly visit. Big Dog and Pony Show always brings reporters to make the district look good. That's our window. Window for what? Sarah asked. To make sure everyone knows about the water problem at exactly the same time. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Every student in the school would receive an anonymous text with photos of our test results. But that was just the first step. At exactly 10:15 during the superintendent's visit, we turn on every water source in the building. Every fountain, every sink, every faucet, all at once. That's gonna flood the school, Tommy said. That's the point. You can't ignore a flood. And when that yellow water is pouring out of every tap in the building while the superintendent is standing there with reporters, they'll have to explain it, Amelia finished. But won't we get in trouble? Sarah asked. Probably, Liam said. But they're already poisoning us. How much worse can it get? I looked around the room at 16 other faces, all thinking the same thing. This was insane. This was risky. This could ruin our academic records, get us suspended, maybe even arrested. But people were getting sick, kids were being poisoned, and the adults who were supposed to protect us were choosing money over our health. I'm in, I said. One by one, the others agreed. We spent the rest of the weekend working out the details. Tommy would handle the mass text system using a bulk messaging app. Amelia would prepare additional water samples and documentation. Sarah would create a list of all water sources in the building. Marcus would coordinate timing with people who had classes near the gym where the superintendent's presentation would be happening. My job was to map out the water system. Liam's dad worked construction and had access to the original building plans for Jefferson High. We spent Sunday afternoon studying the blueprints, figuring out where the main water lines ran and how to maximize the visual impact. The gymnasium is the key, I said, tracing the water lines with my finger. If we can get water flowing into the gym while the superintendent is there. The floor was just refinished last month, Liam said. Cost the district $50,000. Water damage would be impossible to ignore. Monday morning came faster than I expected. I barely slept Sunday night, running through the plan over and over in my head. What if someone got caught? What if the mass text system didn't work? What if Mr. Dalton figured out what we were doing and tried to stop us? But when I got to school, everything seemed normal. Students complaining about Monday morning, teachers looking like they needed more coffee, the usual chaos of 1,700 teenagers trying to get to first period on time. At 9:30, Tommy sent out the mass text. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It contained 3 photos, our water test results, a chart showing safe lead levels versus what we'd found, and a simple message: your school has been poisoning you for 8 months. The administration knows. They chose money over your health. Within minutes, phones were buzzing all over the school. Students were showing each other the photos, comparing the test results to their own health problems. Teachers were trying to figure out what was causing the sudden disruption. At 10 o'clock, I was positioned near the water fountain outside the main office. Through the windows, I could see the superintendent arriving with 2 reporters and a photographer. Principal Steinberg was there to greet them, all smiles and firm handshakes. My phone buzzed with a group text from Liam. Everyone in position. 16 responses came back. Ready. 10:14. I could hear the superintendent's voice echoing from the gymnasium. Something about commitment to educational excellence and investing in our future. 10:15. I turned on the water fountain and walked away. All over the school, my 16 co-conspirators were doing the same thing. Water fountains in every hallway, sinks in every bathroom, the science lab faucets, the art room sinks, even the janitor's utility sinks in the basement. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then someone screamed. Water was pouring into the main hallway from the administrative offices. The fountain outside the principal's office had a broken shutoff valve that nobody knew about. Instead of a normal stream, it was shooting water like a broken fire hydrant. But that was nothing compared to what was happening in the gymnasium. The old building's water pressure system wasn't designed for every tap to be running at once. When all that demand hit the system simultaneously, pressure built up in the pipes until something had to give. What gave was the connection to the drinking fountain built into the gym wall. The fountain exploded. Not literally exploded, but the mounting bracket failed and the entire unit tore away from the wall, sending a geyser of yellow-tinted water across the gymnasium floor, right where the superintendent was standing, right where the reporters were filming, right onto the newly refinished wooden floor that had cost $50,000. I heard the commotion from 3 hallways away, shouting, people running, the sound of rushing water echoing through the building. Fire alarms started going off as water hit electrical systems. The PA system crackled to life with Principal Steinberg's panicked voice. All students report to designated emergency areas immediately. But students weren't evacuating. They were recording. 1,700 teenagers with smartphones, all filming the chaos, all sharing the videos in real time. The mass text with our test results was spreading beyond our school to parents, siblings, friends at other schools. I made my way toward the gymnasium, staying with the crowd of students who were supposed to be evacuating but were too curious to leave. Through the chaos, I could see Principal Steinberg frantically trying to explain the situation to the superintendent while water continued pouring from broken pipes. It's just a mechanical failure, he was saying. Coincidental timing. But Tommy had gotten into the AV system. Our test results were now projected on the gym wall, 20 feet tall and impossible to miss. The lead levels, the health risks, the timeline showing the administration had known for 8 months. The superintendent's face went white. The reporters were asking rapid-fire questions questions. Principal Steinberg looked like he wanted to disappear into the flooded floor. Is it true that students conducted these tests? One reporter asked. Is it true the school board knew about the contamination? Asked another. What's the district's response to allegations that cost concerns prevented necessary repairs? That's when I saw Mr. Dalton. He was standing near the gym entrance, watching the chaos unfold with a mixture of horror and admiration. When he spotted me in the crowd, he caught my eye and nodded slightly. He knew exactly what we'd done and why we'd done it. The next few hours were a blur. Parents started arriving as news of the flooding spread through social media. Not just trickles of parents picking up their kids, but waves of them, demanding answers about the water quality and their children's health. The district tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. Videos of the flooded gymnasium were already viral. Photos of the yellow water were being shared thousands of times. Local news stations were picking up the story. By 2 p.m., the school was evacuated. By 4 p.m., the county health department had arrived to begin emergency testing. By 6 p.m., it was the lead story on every local news channel. The next morning brought even more chaos. The state health department announced they were expanding their investigation to all schools in the district. The Environmental Protection Agency issued a statement about lead contamination in aging school infrastructure. 3 law firms announced they were considering class action lawsuits. We were heroes to some people, terrorists to others. The school board president called us destructive vandals who put students at risk. The parents of affected children called us brave young people who exposed a dangerous cover-up. The legal fallout was intense but manageable. Since we were minors and hadn't actually destroyed any property, technically the water pressure system failed due to design flaws, not our actions. The district decided not to press charges. They couldn't afford the PR nightmare of prosecuting the kids who'd exposed their cover-up. Mr. Dalton didn't get fired, but he did get transferred to another school. Before he left, he pulled me aside. What you did was wrong, he said. It was dangerous and illegal, and you could have gotten people hurt. I started to apologize, but he held up his hand. But it was also necessary. Sometimes the system is so broken that you have to break it a little more to fix it. The investigation revealed that 5 schools in our district had dangerous lead levels in their water systems. Some pipes hadn't been replaced since the 1950s. The school board had known about the problem for over a year, but had delayed action due to budget concerns. The total cost of replacing all the contaminated pipes district-wide was $3 million. Liam's dad later told us that was less than the district had spent on new athletic equipment over the past 3 years. Principal Steinberg was placed on administrative leave and eventually resigned. The school board president was voted out in a special election. Emergency funding was approved not just for pipe replacement, but for comprehensive health screenings for any student who might have been affected. Liam became something of a local celebrity. The quiet kid who transferred from private school was now the face of student activism in our town. Colleges started recruiting him not just for his academics, but for his leadership potential. But the real victory wasn't the media attention or the policy changes. It was Marcus Chen's test results 6 months later showing his lead levels had dropped to normal. It was Sarah's little brother's behavior problems improving once he wasn't being poisoned every day at school. It was knowing that hundreds of kids were healthier because we decided to take action when the adults wouldn't. The new pipes were installed over summer break. When we returned for senior year, the water ran clear from every fountain and faucet. No yellow tint, no metallic taste, no poison flowing through the building where we spent 8 hours a day. Liam and I stayed friends through graduation and beyond. He went to MIT on a full scholarship studying environmental engineering. Wants to design water treatment systems for schools in underserved communities. Says he never wants another kid to go through what we went through. Amelia got into Stanford and is studying public health policy. She wants to work for the CDC someday, preventing the kind of institutional failures that put children at risk. Tommy became the editor of his college newspaper and won awards for investigative journalism. He says our operation taught him that sometimes you have to create the news, not just report it. As for me, I ended up at the state university studying education. Figure if I'm going to be stuck in the system anyway, might as well try to fix it from the inside. Make sure the next generation of teachers and administrators put student safety ahead of budget concerns. People ask me sometimes if I regret what we did, if I think we went too far, if there was a better way to handle the situation. Maybe there was. Maybe if we'd been more patient, more willing to work through proper channels, we could have solved the problem without flooding the school and humiliating the administration. But I doubt it. The truth is, proper channels had failed. The adults who were supposed to protect us had chosen money over our health. The system was working exactly as designed, to minimize costs and avoid accountability, even at the expense of student safety. Sometimes the only way to force change is to make the problem impossible to ignore. Sometimes you have to break the system to fix it. We didn't just sabotage our school that day. We saved it. We saved ourselves and hundreds of other students who were being poisoned by people they trusted. And sometimes when I'm feeling cynical about institutions and authority figures and all the ways the system can fail, I remember that 17 teenagers with smartphone cameras and a chemistry lab were able to do what million-dollar legal departments and government oversight couldn't do. We made the problem visible. We forced accountability. We proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon against institutional failure is just refusing to be silent about it. The yellow water is gone now. The pipes are new. The systems are clean. And kids at Jefferson High don't have to worry about being poisoned while they're trying to learn. But more importantly, they know they don't have to accept it if someone in authority tells them to ignore a problem. They know that sometimes teenagers with test tubes and determination can accomplish more than adults with budgets and bureaucracy. They know that when the system fails them, they don't have to just live with it. They can flood the whole damn building if that's what it takes to make people pay attention. And sometimes that's exactly what it takes. The story made national news eventually. CNN did a segment on student activism and institutional accountability. The New York Times wrote about lead contamination contamination in schools and the failure of oversight systems. Academic researchers studied our case as an example of effective grassroots organizing. But for us, it was never about the attention or the accolades. It was about the simple fact that kids were getting sick and the adults who could fix it were choosing not to. It was about Marcus's rashes clearing up and Sarah's brother being able to focus in class again. It was about knowing that the next group of freshmen wouldn't have to drink poisoned water while their principal gave speeches about student safety. It was about proving that sometimes when the system breaks down, regular people, even 17-year-old regular people, can step up and fix what the experts couldn't or wouldn't fix themselves. 5 years later, our story is still taught in some high school civics classes as an example of effective student activism. Liam gets invited to speak at conferences about environmental justice and community organizing. The documentary about our case won some awards at film festivals. But the part that matters most to me isn't the recognition or the policy changes or even the new pipes. It's the letter I got from a kid at Roosevelt Elementary, one of the other schools where we found lead contamination. "Thank you for making the water safe," it said in crayon. "My mom says you helped make sure I don't get sick at school anymore. That's worth flooding a few hallways for. That's worth risking suspension and legal consequences and angry school board members. That's worth remembering every time someone in authority tells you to trust the system, be patient, work through proper channels. Sometimes proper channels are clogged with the same poison they're supposed to filter out. Sometimes the only way to get clean water is to break a few pipes. And sometimes a handful of teenagers with chemistry equipment and smartphones can accomplish more in one morning than $1 million bureaucracy can accomplish in 8 months of meetings and budget discussions. We didn't just sabotage our school that day. We saved it. We saved ourselves. And we proved that when adults fail to protect children, sometimes the children have to protect themselves. The water runs clear now. The system works. Students are safe. That's all that really matters. But if it happens again, if some other group of kids discovers their school is poisoning them while administrators worry about budgets, I hope they remember our story. I hope they remember that 17 teenagers with test tubes and determination changed everything in one morning. I hope they remember that sometimes the most effective way to fix a broken system is to break it a little bit more, just enough to make the cracks impossible to ignore. I hope they remember that clear water is worth fighting for. And I hope they remember that when the adults who are supposed to protect you decide that money matters more than your health, you don't have to just accept it. You can flood the whole damn building if that's what it takes. Sometimes that's exactly what it takes.